Happy to have you here. We're really happy to have our panelists here. Looking forward to a great conversation. My name is Brian Frenette. I currently serve as the Employer Partnerships Manager in the Career Development Office at the Yale School of Management. In my role, I work with employers in the tech field as they look to recruit SOM students for internships and full-time roles. Happy to be with you this afternoon leading this panel. The purpose of today's panel, we want to share with you stories of some of our current students. For many of you that are joining us today, you may have the MBA on your radar, or the MBA may be a new option of consideration for you while you're looking at paths in healthcare or engineering or data science, and you just want to learn more. We're hoping that you'll be able to do that today through our esteemed panelists. Their journeys are here for you they're going to share their journeys rather with you today and the decisions that they made as they embark upon the MBA path. And we're also going to see how things are going for them here at Yale SOM since their arrival. Now, one thing we want to make sure is very clear is the diversity of backgrounds in our MBA class. The data you see here is for our class of 2027. And this shows the academic backgrounds of the class of 2027, which is quite diffuse. And we do see that STEM is broadly represented here in gusto at 32%, alongside business at 29%, humanities and social sciences at 20%, and economics at 18%. These first-year students come from a variety of STEM backgrounds. We know the broad tent that STEM involves, but it is, as you see, the highest of any of those categories. Now, you may be considering or thinking, why the MBA? The MBA is a very robust and beneficial opportunity and academic experience, one that can open up many different pathways. It can expand your opportunity for roles in employment beyond technical roles as you look to transition into management and learn the language of business. It can be a bridge from technical to strategic roles, areas like product management, operations, data strategy, or healthcare innovation. These roles and the employers who represent those roles stand to benefit from hires that have experience both in technical expertise and bring forth business insight. The MBA also allows for the support of entrepreneurship. Many STEM professionals pursue MBAs to understand how to launch, fund, and scale ventures and gain exposure to venture capital and startup ecosystems. No better place than Yale SOM. Through the MBA, you can also make a broader impact in your professional life. Like many MBA programs, Yale SOM emphasizes impact, sustainability, global leadership, appealing to professionals seeking meaningful, mission-driven career paths. Students, work at the intersection of science, tech, and policy in areas like climate change, healthcare, and AI ethics. And the MBA also is an opportunity to build a diverse professional network. With access to a global cross-functional network, MBA programs connect STEM professionals with peers in finance, consulting, government, and entrepreneurship. I'm thrilled to be joined by a few of our second-year MBA students who, like you, come from a STEM background. We want to hear their firsthand perspective on what made them choose to apply to business school and what they plan to do after graduation. I'll let them take it away. Well, Kanika, you can go.
Hey everyone, I am Kanika and I'm a second year MBA here. Before my MBA, I was a
Oh, Kanika, you were on mute. Sorry about that.
Hey everyone, sorry for this. I'll start again. I'm Kanika and I'm a second year MBA here. Before my MBA, I was a space scientist at the Indian Space Research Organization. So for those of you who don't know, it's the Indian equivalent of NASA. And we were developing Navik, which is, again, the Indian GPS. So that was what I was doing. I did my bachelor's in electrical engineering. For my summer, I went to BCG. I shifted to consulting. Happy to answer any questions here.
Thank you very much. And our next panelist. I think the slide needs to go. Oh, there we are.
Awesome. Thanks, Brian. Hi, everyone. My name is Annika. I'm also a second-year MBA. I use she, her pronouns. I'm originally from Minneapolis, Minnesota, and prior to coming to Yale SOM, I worked at Boston Scientific as an R&D engineer in their Marlborough, Massachusetts office, so I lived in Boston. My undergrad, I attended Duke University and studied mechanical engineering, as well as I did a certificate in innovation and entrepreneurship, so I had a little bit of business exposure, but not much. I came to SOM to expand my business knowledge and business acumen, so I could make a similar pivot to Kanika into consulting. And I spent my summer at BCG in the New York office. So far, at SOM, it's been a great experience. I've been lucky to both expand my business knowledge and also stay close to healthcare, which is what I'm really passionate about. So one of my favorite experiences here has been supporting the Yale Healthcare Conference in collaboration with the Yale School of Medicine, Yale School of Public Health. So far, I think my experience has been both business focused and still maintaining a little bit of connection to STEM.
Wonderful, thank you. Nick.
Hi, everyone. I'm Nick, he, him. I'm originally from South Africa, where I studied medicine. I realized along the way that while I love the science and the being able to help people through that, I felt that the impact I was going to be able to have there was limited by the number of patients I could see in a day. So I felt that pivoting to the business world would give me the ability to run organizations that have a much greater impact. So that's what originally attracted me to the MBA and the skill set it provided. And yeah, why I chose Yale is I just felt it had such a broad exposure for the business world, which is what I wanted, but then the access to the rest of Yale and everything that it offers. Some of the highlights since I've got here has been being a part of the Healthcare and Life Sciences Club, where we've organized a number of very interesting events with fascinating guest speakers and done some work to build the healthcare focused community at Yale SOM. And this last quarter, I was also lucky enough to do an independent study with a professor whose course I took in the spring, which I loved, and I was able to do a deep dive into a field that I was particularly interested in, which was AI scribes in the clinic. So yeah, love that. And my internship, I was also at BCG. It's a common outcome for a lot of Yale students to go into consulting. I worked with healthcare clients over the summer and found it to be a fascinating exposure to a different side of the healthcare system than what I'd gotten through my medical studies. And I'm going to be returning there after the MBA.
Wonderful, thank you, Nick.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kaan, and I'm originally from Houston. I did my bachelor's in mechanical engineering at Purdue University, and immediately after went to UC Berkeley to get a Master of Engineering, which was a one-year program, kind of half business, half engineering. Prior to SOM, I was working as a manufacturing engineer with Schlumberger, now known as SLB, oil and gas company in Oklahoma City. And this role was kind of your typical manufacturing engineering role, where ultimately I was designing fixtures and tools to help people on the shop floor assemble things faster and faster and safer. Ultimately, what made me want to come to SOM and pursue my MBA after this experience was that, one, I really enjoyed the people management aspect of that role. So I kind of got to serve as supervisor, delegating and facilitating a lot of the shop floor, which I really enjoyed. But I also wanted to understand more of like the business decisions into why was I being told that we needed a new fixture for this assembly line? Like, there were a lot of decisions much above my pay grade that I wanted to ultimately be a part of. And that's ultimately why I decided now, or about a year ago, was the right time to pursue my MBA. And as far as why I chose Yale SOM specifically, I had never been on the Northeast, so I wanted that Northeast experience, but I also really enjoyed the community aspect that SOM provided, being that it is a somewhat smaller MBA program and not in your typical big city like Boston, New York, which helps contribute to that community aspect. And some highlights from my SOM experience. I'm one of the co-presidents for the General Management Club, and in this club, we kind of highlight your typical or your non-typical MBA roles. That typical being your consultants and your investment bankers. So we highlight your, corporate strategy, supply chain, rotational development programs. And speaking of supply chain, that is what I was doing this past summer. So I interned with Apple as a global supply manager. And as far as post MBA plans, I'm still interested in supply chain, just looking at a few different industries at this moment. But yeah, happy to answer any questions.
Wonderful, thank you. So we do have some prepared questions that we're going to jump into now, but some of you have already found the Q&A. I invite you to submit your questions. We will have a portion of this presentation reserved for the end to answer those questions as well. So please feel free to send things over as they come to you. We will start off with this question focused on motivation and transition. What motivated you to pursue an MBA after your STEM degree or career?
I can start with this one. I think I was maybe in a little bit of a unique position in that I'd actually considered consulting straight out of undergrad after I went through my engineering training. But I felt like if I didn't do my technical experiences, then I probably never would, because you can't really make the transition from consultant to engineer. So I decided to stay the engineering path, and then from there, I'd always had in the back of my mind that at some point I would pursue an MBA to make the pivot. I think for me, it was more of a matter of when I would go, not if I would go. And so after I'd spent about 3 years in industry, I'd seen new product development in R&D. I'd done sustaining R&D. I spent some time in quality and complaint management. So after a certain amount of time with my company, I felt like I'd seen what I wanted to see and what I wanted to gain from the technical role. And I'd been meeting with a lot of other mentors and people who were at my company doing non-engineering roles who'd received MBAs, and had conversations with them about, what the MBA helped them achieve and the role that it played for them. And that for me was kind of an indicator that I felt ready to go, and I felt like this was the right move for me to make the next step in my career, whether it was similar to a lot of our other panelists, just making a career pivot and gaining business acumen, but also for me, it was about expanding impact too. And I think Nick had talked about this a little bit, but as an engineer, I loved the impact of the devices that I made, but was really interested in expanding it to maybe more of like a global health or health equity lens as well. And so coming to business school at that time for me was the best way to pivot for both my short-term and eventually long-term goals as well.
Wonderful. Annika, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I would like to add, like, unlike Annika, for me, it was more of a journey to understand where I want to go, because like I wasn't always clear where I want to be, but I loved my work at that time. But I never had a say in what kind of projects I want to do. I enjoyed the kind of projects that I want to do. And I looked at what are the ways how I can pivot myself to be in those decision-making roles faster and quicker and in a very structured way. So that's what motivated me to pursue my MBA after my STEM degree and change my role.
Wonderful, thank you. All right, we will continue this thread. What concerns or questions did you have coming from a STEM background, and how are those addressed during your time at SOM thus far?
Definitely. So I think a lot of engineers and researchers, especially scientists, might agree with me that we have spent 6 years of our lives doing, like, being at the pinnacle of what we want to do. So does that all go to waste? Or how do we use that in a business environment and be, especially like somebody who's been doing business or management since their undergrad, or people even start management in their class 11th and 12th in India. So how do we compete with them? How does my degree and my experience can help me get a better role or can help me in my role coming forward? So that was my biggest concern. How was it addressed during my time at SOM? Well, it took a little bit of time, but for me, like, I always had this doubt, but while working at SOM with different kinds of people. So like I'm tutoring and TAing a few quant courses. So I think that background has really helped me connect with people here. And even during my internship, it got addressed the most because I was working on a digital client. So like a utility client, but in their digital space. So what I was doing was when I was reading all those, so I was really quick at understanding everything that's happening in the company. So that gave me an edge over, let's say, other interns, or actually it made me help the client even in a better way than it could have been without my STEM background.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Can I maybe just jump in there? So I guess the one great thing about the MBA class being so diverse is that people do come in with their own expertise, and a lot of STEM people will have a lot of skills in the quantitative stuff. And there'll be other people who were in marketing before or who worked in strategy, and their class is focused on all of those. And obviously, the people that have got that background will excel. But I think being in a class where you've got people with different skill sets and in a collaborative environment like SOM, where people seek to help each other more than compete, it's a great learning environment. And the expectation is that everyone can get up to speed, no matter if you did have a strong quant background or a strong economics or a strong marketing background. So, yeah, being immersed with people from with different skill sets is very, very useful to get up the curve.
Fantastic. Thank you. All right, so let's delve into the academic experience a bit. The question is, how did your STEM background help or challenge you in core MBA classes? And I'm wondering, for those that jump in, if you can give a little sense of how the curriculum is laid out for the audience.
Sure, I can give it a go to start. So SOM's got an interesting way of structuring the curriculum. So instead of focusing on classes like marketing or corporate finance, they tend to be focused on a stakeholder. So while they do tend to fairly closely follow marketing or strategy or finance, they tend to be a little bit more holistic and to blend a little bit more together. Um, so, but basically, it goes through all the different stakeholders that businesses are likely to need to consider, such as your customers, your competitors, um, your finance department, and then ending off with a capstone, which is the executive, which brings together all the different courses that you've done so far in the core curriculum for a final high level overview of the different functions that you, as potentially a CEO of a company, are going to need to consider. Um, and then, yeah, so just in terms of how my STEM background helped with this, I think as a studying to be a doctor, you have to consider different perspectives. And there are different perspectives to the business world. For instance, I had to think about what the patient's needs were and how the patient thought about their situation and how my recommendations would actually affect them. And in the same way, in the course customer, you had to consider the perspective of the customer. And you, as the expert, the business person, or the doctor, you might have a good idea of what they want, but ultimately it needs to make sense for them. And I feel like there are a lot of parallels between my experience before and the classes that I took. Another thing that I think is more applicable to general STEM backgrounds is the systems-based thinking that you tend to learn. There are a lot of different factors that come into the business world, and as the courses are so integrated, it's very useful to be able to think about how different aspects of a certain case that you're doing in class or a business problem interact. And sometimes the answer is not the obvious, simple one, but needs to consider a bunch of different effects that will happen if you take a certain action. So I felt like that helped a lot with just the general structure of learning in the MBA. I think in terms of challenges, yeah, it's hard coming in and having a new subject like the customer, which is very marketing focused, and you don't have a background in it, and it's all new. It's new information, new terminology. But as I said earlier, you have a lot of classmates who are a lot more experienced than you, and the way it's structured is, yeah, you do learn a lot very quickly, and by the end of core, you do feel very competent in a broad range of business skills. So
Wonderful. Thank you, Nick. So to that point, outside of the core classes, Yale SOM is sort of renowned for the opportunity to take on electives. Second year is entirely based on electives that you can take outside of the School of Management here at Yale. For those on the panel, did you pursue any electives, be they entrepreneurship, sustainability, healthcare, that helped bridge your STEM and business interests?
Yeah, I can take this one. So most of us second years basically this, or the second year is mostly when you take a lot of the electives. So a lot of the electives are yet to come for us, but some of the electives that I've been interested in with this kind of the STEM background, one of which I'm TAing is crisis management in tech. And this is essentially just reviewing cases where there's been a crisis, you know, such as like the Theranos cases or the Boeing Max crashes. And I mean, these are applicable to any industry outside of tech. I know a lot of us STEM related people want to go into tech, so it's very applicable to that, but also for other industries. Another one that I took was data science. So that one I kind of wanted a refresher kind of on my software skills. So this class uses like R coding and ultimately is a good intro to, you know, the hot topics of data science, hot topics of AI. There's a lot of AI classes here too. Maybe one of my peer panelists can talk about that after I'm done. Another class being that I'm interested in supply chain. So as part of the core, you'll take an operations class, which is kind of your intro to supply chain. But then if you want to build off of that, there's the supply chain management class, also very popular. And then the last one, I mean, there's multiple entrepreneurship classes, one of which I'm taking is leading small and medium enterprises with AJ Wasserstein, a very popular professor here who's had successful startups in the past, and ultimately really, really a good way to kind of summarize the experiences of, you know, everything you've taken with your STEM background, but also the business acumen, and see how it combines into ultimately leading your own venture. And yeah, there's still plenty more that I'm eager to take in the spring. But as far as the fall, that's kind of that. I don't know if any of my peers want to talk about the AI classes, maybe.
Yeah, is it okay if I jump in?
Please.
So it's my goal in the long term to set up a career in Europe. That's why I use a lot of Yale resources here, and I'm taking a German course. So I would like to invite you all to look at not just SOM resources, but also Yale resources that we can definitely follow. And then, like Nick mentioned, it's really different for us to sit in classes like customer and learn those buzzwords, keywords. So for that, I took marketing strategy. And if you search Professor Ji Woong, he is really great professor in building that strategic framework in any industry. So yeah, those are some really interesting courses that you can look at.
Wonderful. Thank you. Anyone else?
I can jump in a little bit on the healthcare side of things, but also want to reiterate what Kanika had said about taking electives outside of SOM. One thing that's really unique about SOM as an MBA program is that they really encourage you to take classes outside of SOM. So any elective that you take in your second year can be from any Yale school, it can be Yale College, the law school. I've a lot of friends taking classes at the School of the Environment. And so I think that's like on its own a really great opportunity to kind of bridge STEM and business interests. You could take engineering courses still if you wanted to as some of your electives, and kind of try to meld those with the business side as well. For me personally, I've only taken electives so far that are within SOM, but they're still healthcare focused. So last quarter I took public health, entrepreneurship, and intrapreneurship, which was cross-listed, I believe, with the School of Public Health. And that was a really awesome course where pretty much every class, so twice a week, we brought in speakers who were either acting as entrepreneurs or intrapreneurs within the public health space. And then sort of on the other side, I am currently in a course called Healthcare Strategy, which is much more lecture focused, that kind of looks at the US healthcare system and strategic decisions that have been made to improve the system, ways that we can continue to improve it. And there's also a course this quarter called New Frontiers in Medicine, which is looking at a lot of like drug pricing and drug development, as well as some other broader medical innovation topics as well. So for healthcare folks who are considering the MBA, I think there's a lot of really great course offerings that are at the intersection of healthcare and business. And yeah, just also knowing that you can take classes outside of SOM. But I think it's been really fun to balance taking like super business oriented classes that have nothing to do with anything that I've done, and then also taking courses that are a little bit closer to where my interest area is. And it's cool to get to balance those out in your schedule each quarter.
Wonderful, thank you. So acknowledging SOM and the MBA as a professional program, we can think about career exploration and recruitment. How did your career goals evolve during your MBA experience thus far? Did you stick with your original plan as of this date, or has there been a pivot? I saw some questions in the Q&A regarding pivot. So anyone has pivot or is considering a pivot, I think you will be of particular interest. So feel free to share.
I'll start here, but I would love to hear from my other fellow consultants and panelists. So I'd come into the MBA, like I mentioned, wanting to pivot into consulting from my engineering background, and that really didn't change for me. So the consulting, a lot of the traditional recruiting processes really kick off early in the year, like September, October, right as you're getting to campus. And so I came in with the intention of recruiting for consulting, went through that process, and ended up getting my offer through that process. And so my goals personally did not evolve, but I'd be curious to hear if other folks maybe came in a little bit more skeptical about the pivot they wanted to make and ended up doing something different than they thought. One thing I will say is it's also really cool to like kind of in parallel still just be in tune with all of the other recruiting companies that are coming to campus and understanding like what roles they're recruiting for from MBAs. So even though, I'm planning to go into consulting post-grad, understanding still like what kind of roles are available and are looking for MBA candidates within industries is just a good thing to, I think, be mindful of as well. But would love to hear from some of the other folks if any of you guys maybe had a different experience.
I can maybe mention sorry, there's a fire in the background, but I actually didn't think I was going to do consulting coming to business school. After med school, I had pivoted into a finance role and was doing investments and thought I was going to stay along those lines. But through the MBA process, I just realized that actually I don't want to be evaluating businesses from the outside. I would love to be under the hood trying to fix things. And I felt like consulting was an excellent way to get broad exposure to the different challenges businesses have and give me a really good toolkit to supplement the MBA of how to fix them and solve them in a productive way. So yeah, I didn't think I was going to be doing consulting, but I'm really excited to be going back after my second year.
Yeah, I'll also jump in on this a little bit. So for me, I thought of doing consulting when I came here, but yeah, after my internship, I'm planning to switch back into tech, and that's also totally okay. And there are lots of resources for that. I am planning to be very specific, either go in very specific tech consulting or technology companies itself. So yeah, there are plenty of resources for that we can do.
Thank you. Well, to that point, what kind of support did you receive during your recruiting journey, resources, preparation, things of that nature? Feel free to share what was your sort of secret sauce.
Since I already started this train of thought, I'll kind of finish it as well. So we have plenty of resources available for our recruiting journey here. We have a CDO office, the career development office. Then we have lots of clubs for both structured recruiting like investment banking and consulting club, or tech is somewhere there. But we also have lots of clubs involved which also do non-structured recruiting like impact investing recruiting or some other kind of recruiting. So we do have clubs for that. Like we have one club which focuses on food and agriculture recruiting. So those are really interesting. Then we have a great, what worked for me, what kind of support did I get? I definitely used both these resources that I mentioned, but even more than that, what I utilized was the network of alumni, the vast network of alumni that we have. So I just got in contact with alumni, a Yale alumni, not even an SOM alumni, a Yale alumni, who connected me with so many people in the firm that I got to know the firm fully. And there was a great support. So yes, alumni and your peers, I think, are the best support that you can get anywhere, and they are the best.
Anyone else?
I can add on I mean, this kind of goes from the peers, but the clubs here at SOM, they're entirely student run, and all student run by second years who obviously went through that same process that the first years are currently going through. So speaking through firsthand experience, they're able to provide a lot of insight, tell you what works, what doesn't. So for me, I was specifically in the tech club. I'm sure my BCG consultants were in the consulting club, which gives you like a hard and fast structure on how to proceed properly. Investment banking does the same thing. So really any career you're interested in, there is a club for that. And there's second years in that club who can give you great guidance.
Excellent. Thank you. All right. So how have you positioned your STEM background in interviewing, networking conversations during the recruiting journey? How has it come into play?
I can start with this one. I've actually positioned it at the forefront of it. I feel like having a medical degree is something that makes me quite unique relative to other candidates going into consulting. And it brings a perspective that I found actually very useful on the job. So I'm glad I put it at the forefront. But whatever skills you have from your STEM background, there is a way to apply them to the business world, and it makes you more interesting. It gives you a broader sense of a background to apply to whatever problem you'll get on the job. And yeah, I spoke to a lot of people in consulting who had similar backgrounds to me, and it was a great way to get forwarded onto other people within the firm when I'd mentioned that I had a medical background, and they'd be like, oh, okay, well, you better speak to this person who's got a similar background. They might have similar interests to you. You'd enjoy the conversation. And that really helped with the momentum of building the relationships with the firm. So I would not shy away from your background. If it's unusual, it's fantastic, and it sets you up for a more unique and I think a successful recruiting process. So go for it.
Yeah, I would add on to what Nick said as well. Coming from an engineering background, I definitely you can't even help it. Sometimes it's going to be at the forefront of a lot of when you're talking about your experiences. And one of the experiences that I talked about the most in my coffee chats and interviews was 6-month long manufacturing optimization project that I worked on for towards the end of my time working before I came to school. And I think at the surface, it sounds like, this is super technical. How could this be framed in the business sense? But I think when you take a different lens to it, the problems that I was working on, it demonstrated problem solving skills, but also managing stakeholders, cross-functional decision making, and managing priorities, data-driven decision making, things like that. There's lots of other skills that folks from STEM backgrounds utilize maybe without even knowing it, that are really important and leverageable in the business world. And so I think would just want to say, don't let that, if you're considering if the MBA is right for you and you come from a STEM background and you're questioning whether your background could even be relevant or beneficial in the business world, I think it's all about how you frame it. And sometimes it just takes reviewing your experiences with a bit of a different perspective and drawing out, different transferable skills that maybe you wouldn't have thought of initially.
Thank you. Why don't we jump to the looking ahead question? I think it's the following question that should move into our Q&A, looking at the time. I'll move the slide one more. Oh, no, sorry, that is the right one. Apologies. The question is, what advice would you give to a prospective student with a STEM background who is considering an MBA but isn't sure if it's the right move?
I will start with a very basic advice, but sometimes we shy away from doing it. Just talk to people, talk to a lot of people. And like in today's technological environment, we have so many resources. Almost all the schools, at least Yale has this ambassador program that Diana shared. Then we have LinkedIn's. You just type in MBA engineering, Yale, and you find a list of like hundreds of us. So please use these resources. Please use our ambassador program and talk to a lot of people. You would find different perspectives, what challenges they faced, what time did they consider was right. There is no right or wrong time, but like, is this where you feel you're ready? So all these questions can be like addressed in one-to-one conversations. So do talk to a lot of people. Yeah.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, we'll jump
I
into.
can,
Please go
sorry,
ahead.
I can add a little
Good.
point here.
Yeah, please.
I guess it's important to consider what role you want to have in your career. Are you going to become or remain a technical expert, or do you want to focus more on the managerial side? And if the answer is the latter, I feel like the MBA is such a good way to build the toolkit to make yourself a good manager. And that's beyond just the curriculum. It's the network that you develop while you're in business school, the involvements you have beyond the classroom, but then also just being able to understand how to successfully run an organization. And if you do want to become a leader, you do want to have huge impact, I feel like an MBA is an excellent way to set yourself on the right path to do that.
Excellent. All right, thanks. Sorry for talking over everybody. So we're going to jump into the Q&A portion. We have about 15 minutes for that before folks have to jump off to class. Thank you all for submitting your questions. We are going to focus on the questions most relevant for our panelists. There are some admissions-centric questions that our behind-the-scenes team will try to answer as they can. For the group, which course has been your favorite at SOM so far and why?
I can start. For me, it's a class I'm taking this semester. It's corporate finance, and again, coming in as an engineer, and like I wanted to stay away from finance, investment banking, all of that. But I always thought that, if I do want to get to the management level, C-suite level, whatever it is that I truly desire, I need to understand the finances that go into those decisions. And corporate finance has been ultimately like the perfect overview of a lot of what you'll learn into the core. It kind of brings it all together and kind of talks more practically, like giving you cases of, I mean, today we were just going over some mergers and acquisitions, but a lot of the terms that seemed, I won't get into the details, but a lot of the terms that seemed scary at first in the finance world really seem a lot more reasonable after taking this class. And yeah, that's what I'll say.
I do have something to add here. So like I mentioned the customer and marketing strategy class in before this, but there's also this global network week that we go to, which is a mix of class and a program that we attend. So we are required to do one international experience. And as part of that, I did global network week in Berlin last month, I think. This month. I'm sorry, this month. And that was a really eye-opener meeting, like people from 25 different schools around 20 different countries. So yeah, that was part of my favorite part of my MBA, and really interesting to meet people with different perspectives, people from different countries.
Yeah, I'd like to add a more typical type of course is sustainable innovation in healthcare, and it's got the classic case-based learning. So every session we'd have a case that was written up that we'd have to read and write a short paper on, and then during the class we'd end up having fascinating discussions around the whatever sustainable or whatever innovation that was being solved, and oftentimes we'd have the founder of the company that was yeah pursuing this issue come in to talk, and we could ask them questions, and I just found it fascinating to talk to these people who'd solved such big issues in healthcare or were continuing to try and see what we thought about their solutions. So that was a great class.
Also, the best part of my courses has been the availability of professors. So like all the professors are really available, not just after the class, but you set up some time, and one of my professor always boasts about the view from his office to come meet him and talk to him so that you can learn more, you can interact with them more. Yeah.
Great, thank you. This is a question for folks that have either pursued tech or are interested in tech. So this might not apply to everybody here. I thought I'd throw it out there and try. What are the resources and programs at SOM that prepare students to pursue tech post-MBA roles like product management, corporate business development, and partnership? Care to share if they have perspective on that?
Yeah, I can take that one. And I think I kind of touched on it earlier, but the tech club is definitely the biggest resource you can find here at SOM. I mean, in addition to the CDO office, which has advisors who interact with tech companies weekly, but the tech club has a lot of second years who went through that recruiting process. So they know what the tech companies want to hear. They'll give you practice on tech cases, which are a little different than your typical consulting cases. You'll get to practice your behavioral interviews, really nailing down your stories, provide more clarity on some of the differences. Like, I mean, coming in, I've heard product management, technical product management, program management, and I really didn't know the difference between the three. So clarifying some of those. And yeah, overall, I think also the community you get in the tech club. I mean, you have your accountability partners. I think that's also a big resource there.
Great, thank you. All right, this is another question here. What is the expected background in terms of academic and practical knowledge of basic concepts such as accounting, finance, management, and economics for Yale SOM? So as folks coming from STEM backgrounds, what was your experience with regard to this area of subject?
I would jump in on that because I feel like I had no background in accounting. Plus, I came from a government background, so I also had no experience of corporate world. So like no business and no accounting, no finance background. Like a little bit of maths knowledge is required. I think STEM people are already good at that. But even if that's not your strong point, we have camps before the classes to start that. But talking about accounting and everything else, there is no bar of like, there's no minimum bar that you need to clear it.
Yeah, I would just echo what Kanika said. I came in with very little business knowledge. I did a certificate program in my undergrad, which was like 3 or 4 classes of very high level. And I guess I'm coming from a slightly different background because I had worked in industry and in corporations. But I didn't take any economics since high school. I'd never taken accounting. And I think that, and let me know if anyone disagrees, but I don't think that there's any expectation that you come in with any knowledge in any of these areas. We're all coming here to gain those skills and that acumen. And so, like I said, there's a math camp before school. So for folks who don't have quant backgrounds, they can go through that session to get up to speed. We also had to do some summer accounting preview work. So there's like ways to kind of dip your toes and get familiar, but the expectation is not that you come in with any knowledge. And even a lot of STEM folks don't have this knowledge, but there's also a lot of students who are coming from other non-traditional backgrounds that aren't STEM and are almost at even more of a disadvantage because they don't have the quant and the comfortability with some of the math stuff. And I won't go too into detail, but SOM and many other business schools will break out their classes into cohorts and learning teams. And my small learning team was me with an engineering background, a classmate of mine who's a medical student, and then another classmate who was an Army veteran. And like together, the 3 of us had no collective business knowledge, and we made it through just fine. And figuring things out and learning together was part of the fun. So I think not much is expected when you come in, and it's part of why we're here is to learn. It's a big part of why we're here.
Great, thank you. Question here. I'll read the question as is, but we can modify it if necessary. For those recruiting for finance roles coming from a STEM background, have you found it to be an advantage, disadvantage, or a non-factor? in addition to finance, we'll just say roles not tied to STEM, just because I'm not sure if finance applies to the panel, but I want to make sure we're inclusive of other avenues.
I can just okay, I'll go ahead here. I didn't recruit for finance, but one of my best friends in the program was previously in engineering and then did a stint in consulting before coming across to MBA, and he did a internship at an investment bank over the summer. And I know that the finance club's got a very rigorous curriculum to bring people who don't have that background up to speed with the concepts. There's a lot of support from the club. And I don't think there's, as long as you can learn quickly, which you most likely can if you were in STEM, you can handle the quantitative aspects of it. The finance club and the CDO will help with the rest. So it's, yeah, it is accessible, and there've been some very successful people who've pivoted from STEM backgrounds into finance.
I have a similar story like Nick. I did not recruit for finance, but one of my best friends, who's a mechanical engineer, recruited for finance, and he got a very good bank. So banks also look for a different perspectives, and especially in the current times when technology is coming to the forefront of everything. Or even if you don't want to recruit for investment banking, there are fintech banks that prefer your background or this kind of like STEM background.
Excellent, thank you. So here we have kind of the big question, but love to hear your perspective. The person wrote, curious to hear why everyone chose Yale over their other similarly competitive MBA programs. So, in a nutshell, what was the big driver for you all?
I can start with this one. So I think what had initially drawn me to Yale and like what caught my attention when I was starting applications was the mission. So Yale's mission to create leaders for business and society, I think attracts a certain type of person who even, a lot of us are going into consulting and tech. I understand that, but still have societal goals in our careers, which I think was what had initially drawn me. But ultimately, when it came down to choosing between, peer schools and things like that, for me, it was the people. And I'm curious, I think a lot of people say the same thing coming and visiting SOM for either interview day or admissions weekends and getting to actually spend time with the people who you're going to be in school with for the next 2 years. I just really liked everyone I met. Everyone was very kind and really interesting backgrounds. And I knew that was a community that I wanted to be a part of. And I think earlier someone had also spoken to the size of SOM, and SOM is a smaller MBA program. We're about like 350. I think the 27 is a little bit bigger this year. But I think it's a really great size in that I recognize probably most faces in our class. And I think it just lends to building really strong community and a really collaborative community. For those of us who went through consulting recruiting, it hopefully would all say that through the experience, despite it being a very inherently competitive process, I found the all my peers to be very willing to help and practice with each other, and even was preparing for interviews together when we were up for the same office and things like that, which I think really just sets Yale apart with the collaborative nature and strong community.
Yeah, I'll just add to that. So echo all of those points. Another thing, as Kaan mentioned earlier, the fact that Yale is in New Haven, which isn't a major city, is really, really good. And particularly as an international, moving to a place where I didn't know anyone, I felt that being in a smaller area with a smaller class would enable me to build that network just that much better. People aren't going to be running off to meet up with old friends every weekend because, frankly, not a lot of people live in New Haven. And New York's easy enough to get to, but it's just really great having almost a captive peer group during the week, and you end up spending a lot of time outside of school at events and involved in clubs and social get-togethers. And I feel like that's a core reason for the value that the MBA provides. So Yale does that really, really well.
Excellent, thank you. Have folks used any of the entrepreneurship resources at SOM, and what are some of them, or what were your preferences if you've delved into any of those?
It's possible. I'm guessing none of us have, but I can speak to them a bit. So in SOM, we have a entrepreneurial suite where I know every Wednesday they have like brainstorming and bagels where people just come talk about their ideas. There's also a class you can take as an elective where it's essentially just dedicated time through the week where you get to work on your own venture for credit. And then in addition to, or outside of SOM, there's Sci City, which I think was posted in the chat. But basically that's for all of Yale. They have weekly events where people, I mean, successful startups come back and speak, but there's also like pitch nights, matching nights where like if you need a coder, for instance, they'll match you with a coder. So a lot of resources there as well.
And this was really fascinating for me because I did not know of this concept, entrepreneurship through acquisition. So we do have a course and a really good professor. AJ was I think he was mentioned before. Yeah, so he's a really good professor who helps you, and there's a stakeholder club. I don't remember the name of the club, but yeah, you get a lot of resources for ETA and entrepreneurship both.
Excellent. Well, thank you. I think with that, we will be wrapping up as folks have to get to class. I want to thank our panelists for their time and insight perspective. It was wonderful hearing from all of you and the collective journey that you've embarked upon and where you're at thus far. I also like to thank all of our participants who joined us. Great to see so many of you in number, and hope we were able to shed some light on not only why the MBA, but why the MBA here at Yale SOM. So thank you very much for your time, and hope you all have a good rest of your day.